So today's model runs, and I would argue even last night's model runs, have made a lot of noise on social media, and they most definitely have my attention. And we're going to talk all about that today. But first, before we get started, I want to give an enormous sincere and genuine shout out to all the new subscribers that we've gathered. I'm not too sure what happened. I attribute it fully to all of you out there nudging the heck out of that like button. So let's do it all over again. If you're already tuning into this update, let's all take a second to nudge the like button. Give it a little nudge because Monday's video went gangbusters. Big time. So a sincere thank you to those of you who took the time to show some support, drop a comment on that video, as well as to all of you who entrusted the Weather Center with your tropical weather and all your general weather for that matter. Enormous thank you. We managed to blow right past 18,000 subscribers, and I'm humbly grateful for every single one of you, and I hope that we can all keep rocking and building some momentum together. I also want to add the disclaimer. If, like right now, for example, my voice suddenly trails off a little bit, I am battling a wicked bug of some sort. I think being on low sleep and just grinding as much as I have with work, other shenanigans, school, etc., my body has kind of shut down on me. So I'm battling a fever and a massive headache as shooting this video. So we've got a lot to talk about. If you are brand new to the channel, if the algorithm is still on our side, it would mean the world to all of us as the weather-centric community if you kindly consider hitting that subscribe button. Once again, give that like button a little nudge, and let me know in the comments section where you're watching from, because I'll tell you right now, not blowing the whistle on this feature out there just yet, but I want my Leeward Island, U.S. British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, even the Dominican Republic now. I need eyes wide open from down there, okay? The United States, the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, we're still questionable, but we're going to walk you through everything that I have for you today, starting off with National Hurricane Center's homepage. So I'm a little, I think National Hurricane Center is being a little steadfast in this disturbance. Now, I'm not arguing against the 40-80 split that we have here, but I'm a little astonished that we haven't quite made it to invest designation just yet. ASCAT overlay wind data captured by the ASCAT satellite does show a closed center, at least an attempt at consolidating a closed low-level center, albeit embedded in the ITCZ, that tropical convergence zone down there, and what's called the extension of the monsoon trough that comes off the west coast of Africa, associated with the easterly jet that pumps out these tropical waves. There's a wave that's caught up into all that mess once again, but the vorticity signature, the spin, and the closed turning in the winds would suggest we should have enough for an invest, 91L, but we haven't pulled the trigger just yet. And to tell you the truth, after today's model evolutions, I'm eager to see them do that. I want to see what our track guidance and our intensity guidance shows, because there's a lot of wiggling and wobbling still going on out there. But one thing I also want to emphasize to all of you watching from the islands, especially all my friends and family out there, especially in Puerto Rico, heads on a swivel. This formation zone has definitely been being tugged further and further towards the south. And even today's earlier afternoon model runs, the GFS, the Euro especially, and the AI model, we'll touch on that a little bit, because even though the AI model has also been showing a little wonkiness in terms of actually developing this area of interest, it's been on target with the steering pattern. And we've actually seen the Euro, the operational Euro, and the good old GFS correcting towards that. Let's take you on in for a bird's eye view. We're going to switch over to the True Color Visible Satellite. Let me get my face out of the way so we can all kind of take this in together. We're losing the sunlight, so it's going to take us a little bit to kind of identify what we're looking at, but our feature's right in through there. It's kind of a messy pattern, so we still have a lot of that dry, sinking air to the north here. Make no mistake, that's not any kind of Saharan air coming off of Africa. It does look like there's still a little bit of it, but granted, that's just because we're still in the heart of summer, transitioning towards the fall, so the thermal low and what is usually helped to instigate that Saharan dust and that Saharan air to come off of Africa is still present, but that's not exactly what's causing any kind of hindrance or any weirdness out there. I think just overall, this extension of our monsoon trough, how raggedy the ITCZ looks. You can see it right in through there, that little cloud band I created in the dashed lines. That would be where the convergence zone, where your northerly winds, your northern hemisphere winds meet the southern hemisphere trade winds. And you can see there's some big old kinking going on in there. It's trying to pull away. And you could definitely make a case. Let me clear all my excessive doodling out of the way, but you can definitely make a case. We have some pronounced turning in the winds and a little bit of our thunderstorms trying to consolidate over what could possibly be an attempt at this thing pulling away. But overall, it's still a messy configuration out there. We also have another tropical wave that's slowly meandering off the coast of Africa, and then another one back behind that. So we're starting to see the deep tropics come into life despite still being under the suppressed phase of our Madden-Julian oscillation. We still got to give it a little more time. I know those are the famous last words of this hurricane season. Just give it a little more time. But honestly, we've given this some time, and there's been some pretty hectic evolutions with it, and I want to talk all about that. Before we get into it, though, I want to hit you with some heavy hitter stuff right out of the gate before some of you start clicking away. Here is our latest outlook from the subseasonal Euro. Subseasonal being basically like in the midst of the season. We're not looking at a whole season. We're looking at pieces and blocks of time from within the season, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, etc. This is coming up next. This is valid from the 8th of September through September 15th. And notice how the MDR, and even closer to home down there, we're still watching the Western Caribbean and the Bay of Campeche. I do think that even though we've seen some pretty sudden upticks in our model ensembles down there showing the potential for a developing low pressure or let alone a tropical system, with the Central American gyres or with the gyre wave coupling where we have a wave that's very weak, wanders into that area of rising motions, typically our models will get a little excited. They'll kind of jazz themselves out over it, but it'll delay. There's a little bit of latency. So models will start to show the signal. It'll oscillate back and forth until finally we get a more concrete signal that will become trackable after 5, 7, maybe 10 days. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now, because the GFS, the Euro, the Canadian, the Euro AI even, they're showing the signal. They're showing the signal, but it's a little early, I think. They're showing it between September 11th, which has been my specific date and time where I think the gates will start to open up for the peak of hurricane season. But I think in terms of anything firing in the Gulf or the Western Caribbean or a combination of, we got to give that also a little more time. I think closer to September 15th, maybe 17th, approaching the 20th, that's when we'll actually have a legitimate signal to work with. If you fast forward to the 15th to the 22nd, the Euro kind of backs me up on that. If you notice, our probabilities really uptick in the Bay of Campeche there and even in the Western and Central Caribbean. The MDR is guns a-blazing at this point, though. If you notice, we're already up to rocking at that 60 to 70 percentile of a tropical cyclone, let alone very healthy tropical waves meandering off the coast there. From the 22nd through the 29th, notice how we're percolating even more, though, on the western side of the basin. So I think that's when, the second midsections and the second half of September is when we all got to keep our eyes open if you reside in the United States. And I do think we should at least keep one eye on this area of interest, likely to take on 91L here very soon. Also, other breaking news that we had come across the desk today. This is Colorado State's intraseasonal forecast. They do their 2-week blocks now as we hit the heart of the hurricane season. And for this block in particular, from I believe about the 3rd through the 16th of September is their forecast period, as it's called. They're looking at normal ACE. Normally. So we're not going to be exactly going gangbusters, but think about it. Let's put it into perspective. Let's not get wrapped up on normal. It's also September 3rd. So normal ACE for this time, especially for the 2-week period, normal ACE as we go through the peak over the hump of the peak of the hurricane season, we're usually rocking out there. Couple hurricanes, couple tropical storms, maybe a major hurricane. So for them to have a 65% probability of that middle tercile, a 9 to 36 accumulated cyclone energy output, total ACE we could accrue during the 3rd to the 16th of that forecast period, that's a pretty sporty amount. If you think about it, Aaron provided us with about 30 ACE. So we either have multiple tropical systems out there or some hard-hitting major hurricanes. So we're going to definitely keep an eye on that. Their previous forecast from late August into early September verified immaculately. I looked over the numbers, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to hit you with those, but it did verify very well. They hit it pretty much right on the money. So we definitely should look at this and kind of keep our eyes peeled. I also shared this in a community post yesterday, if you managed to catch that. I know I didn't do a live discussion. Not too much had evolved from yesterday's, or I should say Monday's discussion, but I thought this was incredibly interesting because if you notice, it's not too often where we have the potential for development of a tropical system pretty much blanketing the Greater Antilles, the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos, southern Florida. southeastern and southwestern western Florida all the way back through the Bay of Campeche coming up over the next 2 weeks. And then that continues to carry on through for the second half of September, starting on the 17th through the 23rd, with a very, very high probability we continue to see main development region development out there, which I just said development way too many times. I'm sorry about that. Development. Say that 5 times fast. But they're definitely showing a very interesting phase here. I do think that we could see development very close to home, especially, like I said, after about September 15th. September 11th is still the date I hope you all have notated down there, whether it be on your phone or even just, like a little mental sticky note. Definitely remember that date and time. I think once we get the MJO really into range and our models can catch up like they have with our current area of interest, all of them showing and locking into development and now showing these westward ticks, I do believe we're going to see that adjustment once again over the next 7 some odd days, today being September 3rd of 2025. So about, again, that infamous 9/11 anniversary. That's when I think we're all going to be very keen to see what our models are showing at that point. All right, now this is where it gets a little interesting. I'm going to take my face out of the way once again so I can step you through here carefully because I want to show you what's been going on. So what I'm scrolling through currently is 24 hours ago. This is the Euro model from 24 hours ago, yesterday afternoon, when I was looking at some of the data, and I'm sure a lot of you were seeing it posted on social media as well. This was the Euro output showing a very healthy tropical storm, if not a low-end hurricane, passing hardly to the north of our friends out there in the Leeward Islands, and then scraping the upper borders of the U.S. British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico before peeling up towards the north and west, all thanks to a strong system that tries to develop off the mid-Atlantic and northeast coast of the United States, helping to create that path of least resistance that these features tend to follow. Now let me take you, I'll go back to, we'll say 7 days. 7 days is usually optimal. So we'll go to the 7-day mark here from yesterday's model, and then I want to show you what 7 days out looks like today. Massive jump to the south. A massive jump to the south, and today's model run actually cranks this thing as a tropical storm, mind you. It's not a lethal hurricane, let alone a major hurricane solution, so we have that going for us. But the Euro, as of this afternoon, shows a healthy, possibly, we'll say 50, 60 mile an hour tropical storm just based on the vorticity signature and the sea level pressure that's forecast for the system as it moves through there, generally west and west-northwest, through the Leeward and Windward Islands, and then moves dangerously close to Puerto Rico as a strengthening tropical storm, and then essentially gets cheese grated as it tries to thread the needle between western Puerto Rico and eastern Dominican Republic. The island of Hispaniola is very unforgiving. It's like jagged concrete to these features, and you don't want to scrape your knee up against it because that's exactly what happens with these tropical cyclones. They move over such rough mountainous terrain, and that low and mid-level spin become completely decoupled and just kind of removed from the equation altogether. But the key takeaway here is the operational Euro, if we do manage to successfully thread the needle between these islands and walk through there like we've seen with previous systems, especially like the likes of Hurricane Matthew and Isaias back in the day, this could become a little uncomfortable for us in the Bahamas, in the southeastern United States, even up towards the mid-Atlantic. We still have a lot of sorting out to do with a pattern, but regardless, these westward ticks are far more noticeable than they ever were with Hurricane Aaron, and that's why I'm actually talking about them. With Aaron, we had those westerly jogs, but it wasn't quite as substantial of a deviation in the track as we're seeing now. If you come over to the tendency or the trends with the GFS, I also want to hit you with another batch of good news before anybody takes to the comments and mentions that, this is all doom and gloom here. The main reason I don't want us to step on the gas or start to buy into some of the other stuff you may see flying around on social media is look at the spread here. This is a ridiculous discontinuity run to run. We're talking in 6-hour increments here, 0, 0, 6, 12, 18 are cardinal hours where the models will run. We went from way up past to the east of the Bermuda Island all the way down to just off the coast of the Leeward Islands. Now, is there some merit to this? Absolutely, because other models such as the Canadian, the Icon, and the Euro have been steadily ticking back towards the west. But then we also have an enormous discontinuity in our ensembles when you compare the ensembles to their deterministic solution, the output that we're seeing here from the one global model. All their individual ensemble members show something almost totally different. Even the euro, despite it going into the Caribbean, this model run really doesn't have many ensemble members. I'd say about maybe 10 to 15% of them actually do show a solution of it working into the Caribbean. Will we see adjustments continuing on in? Absolutely. Will they be east? Will they be west? Further south? Further north? That remains to be seen. I just want eyes on this because right now the trends are not our friend, and they're showing it could be a far more impactful system once it does get going over the next 48, 72, 96 hours. However, we still have a lot of sorting out to do. The one key player here I want to bring to your attention is the AI model, because the AI model, albeit very frugal with trying to develop this feature, has shown consistently day after day, run after run of this thing cranking off towards the west, making it into the Northeast Caribbean, scraping beneath Puerto Rico, Hispaniola before possibly washing out due to island interaction or the fact that this model actually keeps a bit of a more hostile pattern out there when compared to the Euro and the GFS. So for example, if you fast forward the clock, here on the upper heights, these are your height anomalies showing where your ridging and your troughing is. This would actually be the system right there, believe it or not. And I'll use a different color ink so you guys can see a little bit better. That slight difference between the dark orange here and the dark orange red here, that little pocket there, that nook, is actually our low pressure. That would be the forecasted system, the reflection of it high up in the atmosphere. This here is an upper level cold pocket, an upper level low. And I think that's partially the reason why the AI model is very against trying to spin this thing up into more than just a sloppy tropical depression or a weak named storm. And then as it continues through the loop, you notice you lose that little signature altogether as it traverses the eastern and central Caribbean, all thanks to that cutoff low still hanging out there. But this is what I really want us paying attention to, is this positively tilted trough that remains over the eastern United States. In the last 12 to 24 hours, most of our global models have shown this breaking off and actually leaving a pocket of upper level low back over the southeast. And if you've been following the tropics long enough, which is why I'm a little more okay, this is something we need to watch for, and I really hope this takes that invest tag very soon. Sorry, I'm going to slow it down because I'm like starting to lose my energy here. But usually when you have a cutoff low down here over the southeast United States, not only does that cause ruckus with the rest of the jet stream pattern, your large-scale weather pattern, but it also tends to attract any low pressure, i.e. a tropical system out there. It kind of hooks it in like a magnet. It kind of pulls it back, almost like a pseudo Fujiwara effect. And I think that's what the GFS did a fantastic job of showing today, albeit I throw my hands up. I want to echo that was way out into the future, la-la land, as we would call it, with the GFS. But the fact that the Euro AI, and the GFS now are locking on this potentially being more of a cutoff low, drifting back towards the west over Florida and the Gulf Coast, tells me that we definitely don't want to let off the throttle. This is not going to be an easy forecast, and it's not something that we can confidently say is going out to sea or won't be an impact on anyone's weather. And I'm talking about our friends in the islands, friends in the Antilles, all the way through the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos, and Bermuda. I don't want to let off the throttle and comfortably say no one's going to be impacted, but I do want to see another 24, 48 hours of continuity to see if we bounce right back out to sea or if we hold these trends. And especially once we get an area of investigation, 91L would be the designation. That's what I want to see. I want to see what our trends look like then. If you look at yesterday's control ensemble from the actual Euro, notice here yesterday's run shows that elongated trough all the way back up over the North Atlantic, extending southwesterly to the mid-Atlantic coast. If you look at today's model run, notice how we're starting to pinch that off. You see that? The rest of the trough escapes over the North Atlantic up towards the United Kingdom, Northern Europe, but then as of Sunday, September 14th, we're left with that little cold pocket, that breakaway cutoff area of energy, which also, like the Euro today showed, if it does manage to weaken as a result of land interaction, then this could just shear it apart and once again act like that infamous East Coast shield, albeit if it were a much more organized system, it would actually pull it in. So it's a catch-22. It's always a catch-22 with these things. And then lastly, before we get ready to wrap up, I want to show you the ensembles. And like I said, that weird discontinuity. So if I had to roughly draw it in for you, today's GFS definitely took us on a more southerly track like so. And then it did have it making landfall near South Carolina and Georgia. That'd be what the GFS showed today. And if you notice, all of its ensembles are far to the north and east of where the actual deterministic run popped it out. And then we also have that little percolating signal still near the Yucatan Peninsula in northern Central America there that we'll have to pay attention to as we get a little further in time. Notice this is the 13th. Remember what I said at the beginning of the video? Sometimes models will get a little overzealous with the CAG down there or an embedded tropical wave that it'll try to spit out into something. We were originally looking at the 11th and the 12th, and now we're just barely starting to see some members down there by September 13th. So we're already seeing that pushing back. So despite what I had mentioned on Monday, if you took that as I had mentioned an imminent threat, no, that's not what I was saying. It's just a familiar signal, and we'll have to keep an eye on it. And that's exactly what I'm doing. If you look at today's Euro output, we do have more ensemble members, albeit those weaker members that do take this system through the Leeward Islands. If you have a stronger solution, a system that wraps up and gets moving a little bit earlier, then yes, we will feel the weakness in the ridge before it can fully build back in. But again, we have a huge fork in the road, and I need all my islanders down there if you're watching. I know I have a lot of you wonderful viewers down there. If you're watching this, please keep your eyes open, head on a swivel. We're not far done with this at all whatsoever, and we can't write it off for anybody, especially you all down there, like I always say, on the front lines. And then you can see here the Euro also just barely starting to squeak in a few ensemble members, minus the one rogue that goes towards the panhandle. We're starting to get that squeaking in of a few handful of the members showing something by September 13th. So we've already started to see that pushing back in time, and I think we'll have to give it another 7 or 10 days, even after September 11th. Maybe 7 to 10 within that window is when we'll really start to get that authentic signature. But for now, I want eyes on the MDR. I want eyes on what this system is going to do. And before we go sounding the whistle or blowing the whistle, sounding the alarms, like I said, I personally would feel a lot better if we could give this another 24 to 48 hours before we really start to dial in if anyone needs to be prepared or if anybody needs to be concerned, just because we've been trending throughout the days. We haven't held steady yet. We're still making adjustments. And with that being said, that's all I've got. We'll go ahead and start wrapping up. Thank you all so much for watching today. I know this is a bit of a longer video. Thanks if you stuck around till the end. I do sincerely appreciate it. We'll make it a quick outro. I'll see you again very soon. If I do get my voice back and I do get back to 100% sooner than later, I've just been kind of on my rear end resting as much as I can, hoping that I'll bounce back by tomorrow, if not Friday at the latest. I will be hitting a live stream. I can promise you all that, especially if these trends do start to lock in. And then if there's any other signals that you all need to know about in advance before we rock into what I think could be a very busy phase for the rest of September after September 11th, and maybe even the early periphery of October. So we'll see you again soon. Be on the lookout for live stream notifications, community posts, and especially this Friday, your latest tropical update here on the channel will be releasing. Stay safe out there. God bless. And I hope everything is great in your neck of the woods. Until next time, this is WxCenter Nazario signing out.